Hi guys, and today we're going to do another short history this time of the Flying Scotsman. The Flying Scotsman is a London and North Eastern Railway, or LNER for short, A3 Pacific class number 4472. It was built in 1923 at the LNER Doncaster Works, designed by Nigel Gresley as an A1 Pacific. It costed £7,944 to build. Now when it entered service, it had the Great Northern Railway number 1472, but was designated number 4472 by February of 1924. It got its name from the Flying Scotsman service which ran between London King's Cross and Edinburgh Waverley. It became a flagship train for the LNER, being used at the British Empire exhibition at Wembley Park in 1924 and 1925. In 1928, the service became non-stop and 5 A3/A1s, including the Flying Scotsman, were used. For these runs, she also received an extra tender, carrying extra long-ton, or £2,240/1,016 kilograms of coal. On 30th November 1934, she became the first locomotive officially to reach 100 miles an hour, or 161 kilometers an hour, while hauling a light test train between Leeds and London. The City of Truro 100 mile an hour 1904 record is unofficial. When the A4s were introduced in 1935, the Flying Scotsman was relegated to smaller duties, but will still work on the main line and still hauling passenger services. She was then renamed to 502, then 103, both presumably in 1946. By 1945, all remaining A1s, including number 103, were reclassified as A10s, and number 103 became an A3 on 4th January 1947. With British Railways formation in 1948, number 103 was renamed E103, before being renumbered 60103 a few months later. On 4th June 1950, it was allocated to run services to and from London Marylebone, St Pancras, Leicester, Sheffield, and Manchester. She returned to the East Coast Main Line in 1953. In December 1958, she was fitted with a double clee-chap chimney, probably butchered that pronunciation, but this caused smoke to block the driver's vision. In late 1961, she was fitted with German smoke deflectors to fix this problem. Rumours that British Railways would scrap her, businessman and railway enthusiast Alan Pegler bought her for £3,500, £63,928 today, with financial help from Prime Minister Harold Wilson. She last ran on 14 January 1963, hauling a 1:15 p.m. service from London King's Cross to Leeds. She covered a total of 2.8 million miles on almost 40 years of operation. See you in part 2. Bye guys. Hi guys. Now before we continue this video, I just want to say this is a part 2 to a part 1. So if you haven't already watched the previous short, watch it now. Thank you. And today, we're continuing the short history of the Flying Scotsman. Alan Pegler immediately restored the Flying Scotsman to her LNER conditions at Doncaster Works. She was numbered 4472 and painted apple green. The smoke deflectors and double chimney were removed, replaced with a single chimney. Under his contract with British Railways, Pegler was allowed to run number 4472 on the network until 31st December 1971. It first publicly ran on 10th April 1963, running from London Paddington to Rowborn Station in Wales. In 1964, Pegler had number 4472 sat on the 4th bridge for a couple of days, while a portrait of her was sketched by English painter Terence Cuneo. Number 4472 recouped her cost for Pegler by the end of 1965. As watering facilities started disappearing, Pegler fitted number 4472 with a second corridor tender and an auxiliary water tank for a combined total of £7,000, or £169,271 a day. Number 4472 was overhauled in the winter of 1968 to 69, and following this, Harold Wilson's government allowed Pegler to run number 4472 in the USA and Canada, a trip which almost led to the scrapping of the Flying Scotsman. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. To comply with railway regulations in the US and Canada, she was fitted with a cowcatcher, bell, rockeye couplers, an American-style whistle, air brakes, and a high-intensity headlamp. The trip began in October 1969, running from Boston, Massachusetts to Atlanta, Georgia, via New York City and Washington, D.C. towards Salton, Texas, where she rested for the winter. Some states, deeming number 4472 a fire hazard, either denied permission for her to run in them or required her to be towed by a diesel or electric locomotive. Restrictions on forward trains meant that Pegler couldn't carry passengers and that he had to pay local railway lines to run on them. In 1972, Pegler started earning money through running passenger trips on the San Francisco Belt Railroad, stationed at Fisherman's Wharf, San Francisco. But issues and complaints relegated number 4472 to less accessible yard, reducing income by 90%. Pegler bankrupted in August of that year, £132,000 in debt, £2,260,870 a day. So number 4472 was kept in storage at the US Army Sharp Depot in Lathrop, California, keeping it from unpaid creditors who were demanding payments and threatening legal action. See you in part 3. Bye guys. Hi guys. And before we start this short, I just want to say this is the part 3 to a part 2. So if you haven't already watched the previous short, watch it now. Thank you. And today, we are continuing the short history of the Flying Scotsman. Fearing the possibly grim future of the Flying Scotsman, horticulturist and steam enthusiast Alan Bloom asked businessman and railway enthusiast William McAlpine to help save her, which he agreed to, paying off all debts and purchasing number 4472 for £25,000 or £428,185 today, paying around £27,765 or £475,542 today to ship number 4472 back to England via the Panama Canal. She arrived in Liverpool in February of 1973 and ran to Derby, where she was restored at Derby Works. She was then transferred to Steamtown and Carnforth, where she ran on regular tours. She underwent heavy repairs at the Vickers Engineering Works in Barron-Furness in December 1977, and in 1984 she became the first preserved steam locomotive to hold a Royal Train on the British mainline. In 1986, McAlpine leased a former diesel locomotive maintenance shop at Southall Railway Centre in London, which became the base for number 4472. For 200 days of Australia, number 4472 arrived there and ran for over 28,000 miles, which is 45,000 kilometres, arriving at Sydney and travelling to Melbourne. After these celebrations, she further travelled in New South Wales, then to Brisbane, also running from Sydney to Perth via Alice Springs. During this time, number 4472 broke a second world record, completing the longest non-stop run by steam locomotive, covering 422 miles or 679 kilometres between Parkes and Broken Hill in New South Wales. 8th August 1989, she set her own haulage record, taking a 735-ton train. When she returned to Britain, she was run back to 60103 and brought back to a British Railways condition, her double chimney and smoke deflectors returning. In 1982, her running certificate expired and number 4472 retired from the main line. McAlpine sold number 4472 in 1993 to help pay a mortgage on her. Then, music producer and railway enthusiast Pete Waterman helped McAlpine form Flying Scotsman Railways. Then, in April 1995, number 4472 derailed during an empty stock movement on the Llangollen Railway in Wales, with all wheels coming off the track. When she was returned to steam, smoke emerged from a crack between the boiler and front cab. She was then withdrawn from service and went to Solihull for another major overhaul. See you in part 4. Bye guys. Hi guys. This is a part 4 to a part 3, so I haven't watched the previous short, and part 2 and part 1. Watch them now. Thank you. Today we are continuing the short history of the Flying Scotsman. Just like Alan Pegler over 2 decades back, William McAlpine and Pete Waterman had run into financial issues, so to help pay off an overdraft, number 60103 was put on sale, and on 23rd February 1996, entrepreneur Tony Marchington bought 60103, a self-Pullman coaches and the Solihull depot, buying a total of £2.5 million, or around £6.1 million today. She also received an upgraded boiler, originally for an A4 class locomotive. Her vacuum brakes were replaced with air ones, her smoke deflectors were removed, double chimney restored, and finally, she was running back to number 4472. Then, in 2000, Channel 4 made a documentary on the Flying Scotsman called The Steamy Affair, the story of the Flying Scotsman. Number 4472 first ran on 4th July 1999, hauling the inaugural Scotsman from King's Cross to York. It was the first time visiting King's Cross in over 30 years. Number 4472 also hauled the Venice Simplon Orient Express Pullman several times between 2001 to 2004. However, almost as soon as it started, financial issues came. Flying Scotsman Railways couldn't market or price their runs effectively, and number 4472 also failed several times. In 2002, Marchington proposed a business plan, including building a Flying Scotsman village in Edinburgh. Also in 2002, he floated an OFEX as Flying Scotsman plc. Then, in 2003, Edinburgh City Council turned down the village plans. Marchington would declare bankruptcy in September of 2003, and PLC CEO Pete Butler announced losses of £474,619 or £974,069 a day, with £1.5 million or around £3.1 million a day in overdraft in Barclays Bank, stating having enough cash until April of 2004. Although the company's shares were suspended after failing to declare interim results. See you in part 5. Bye guys. Hi guys. Before we start this short, I just want to say this is the part 5 to a part 4. So having already watched the previous short and part 2 and part 1, watch it now. Thank you. And today we are continuing the short history of the Flying Scotsman. February of 2004, a debt agency acting on behalf of Flying Scotsman plc announced the sealed bidder number 4472. The winner was the National Rail Museum, or NRM for short, in York. As it feared foreign hands, it secured a winning bid of £2.3 million or £4.6 million a day. So, number 4472 became part of the National Railway Museum's National Collection. This year also came with a spare boiler from 1944 that number 4472 had carried from 1965 to 1978. It also came with some spare cylinders and a spare Mark I coach. Number 4472 arrived in time for Railfest in 2004, celebrating 200 years of rail travel. Number 4472 also occasionally hauled trains across the UK, although problems with her became increasingly apparent. She failed on several delivery trips to Railfest, and National Railway Museum's engineering staff had spotted critical faults, so number 4472 was put into the National Railway Museum's workshop for a heavy intermediate repair. These, however, failed to improve much, so National Railway Museum instead decided to proceed with a general